Hello again. This is literature for Friday, April 3rd. Um, today, you were supposed to read about Pandora and take the quiz on Pandora. So if you have not done either of those two things or haven't done both of them, please do that first. Read the myth of Pandora and then take the quiz and pause the video while you're doing that. Then come back and watch because we will first sort of review the story. We said yesterday that the myths of Prometheus and Pandora are linked because one is sort of the result of the other. So after taking care of Prometheus's punishment, Zeus had Hephaestus mold a girl out of clay that was as beautiful as Aphrodite. Uh, and then he breathed life into the figure. And then he asked all the gods the to give this figure just come to life gifts. Apollo taught her how to sing and play on the lyre, for example. Athene taught her how to spin. Demeter taught her how to garden, so on and so forth. So they get all these gifts. And then Hermes gives her a beautiful golden box and tells her never, ever open it, which probably would have been fine, except Hera also gave her the gift of curiosity. You know, when someone's got that, it's hard for them to resist being curious. Then they take this lady that they named Pandora down to, I think Pandora means all gifted or something. Hermes takes her down to Prometheus's brother, Epimetheus, and gives uh, Pandora to Epimetheus as his wife. And things go along okay at first. And then she starts getting curious about the box, which she keeps in in the main room of their house in a special place. It just seems to be drawing her attention. So she hides in a storeroom, and that doesn't seem to help. She starts thinking about what Hermes said. Well, you know, he likes to play jokes. Maybe he was only kidding. Maybe he expects me to open and look at what's inside. So, you know, she's starting to try and play with the idea that he said. She realizes he actually said, don't open it under any circumstances. And she puts it in the dusty little storeroom. And later on, to keep herself from opening it, she locks it in a heavy oaken chest, puts shackles around it, and digs a hole in the garden and buries it. Um, but that same night, the moonlight's coming into her room. She can't sleep, and all she can think about is the box. So she goes out, digs it up, takes the chains off, and whips it open, and all these icky, scaly creatures come out. Outswarmed swarmed small, scaly, lizard-like creatures with bat wings and burning red eyes. They flew out of the box and circled her head, clapping their wings and screams, and then flew off into the night, hissing and crackling. She manages to slam the lid down on the last one, which was a good thing. The things that came out of the box, they were all the ills that beset mankind, things we call the spites of our existence. Old age, famine, insanity, sickness of all kinds, death. And so they fly into the homes of everyone and just hang from the ceiling until the time is right. But if that last little creature had gotten out, that the last little creature was foreboding. And if it had gotten out, everybody would know every bad thing that would possibly happen to them every day of their lives ahead of time. They would know all of them, and they wouldn't be able to stop them. And because of that, they would not be able to have any hope in life. And as the story says, man can live with a lot of troubles, but he cannot live with no hope at all. So let's see. Looking. Yes, so we're looking for reading the first half of Phaethon for tomorrow. I divided it up because it's a little longer story. So I think I assigned all but the two of you who have the brand new book, pages 65 to 70 in the book, which is the first part of Phaethon. We move on today with more of the adventures of Ulysses. The next chapter is a section called the Lotus Eaters. It says, now at this time, the shore of Libya was known as the land where Morpheus plays. Who was Morpheus? He was a young god, the son of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and the nephew of Hades. It was his job to fly all around the world from nightfall till dawn, scattering sleep. His father, Hypnos, mixed the colors of sleep for him, making them dark and thick and sad. Because, he said, it's like a little death that you're laying upon man each night when he sleeps, my son, to prepare him for the kingdom of death. But his aunt, Persephone, sewed him a secret pocket full of bright things and said, it's not death that you're scattering, but rest. Hang the walls of sleep with bright pictures so that man may not know death before he has to die. These bright pictures were called dreams, and Morpheus became fascinated by the way a little corner of man's mind remained awake in his sleep and played with the colors he had hung, mixing them, pulling them apart, making new pictures. It seemed to him that these fantastic colored shadows the sleepers painted were the most beautiful, most puzzling things he'd ever seen, and he wanted to know more and more about how they came to be. He went to Persephone and said, I need a flower that makes people sleep. It must be purple and black, but there should be one petal streaked with fire red. That petal will make dreams. Persephone smiled, moved her long white hand in the air, and between her fingers a flower blossomed. She gave it to him. Here it is, Morpheus, black and purple like sleep, with one petal that's fire red for the dreams. We will call it the lotus. Morpheus took the flower and planted it in Libya, where it's always summer. The flower grew in clusters, smelling deliciously of honey. The people ate nothing else there. They slept all the time, except when they were gathering flowers. Morpheus watched over them, and he read their dreams. It was toward Lotus Land that Ulysses and his men were being blown by the gale, which was sent by Poseidon. The wind fell while they were still offshore. The sky cleared, the sea calmed, a hot sun beat down. To Ulysses, who was dizzy with fatigue and weak with hunger, the sky and the water and the air seemed to flow together in one hot blueness. He shook his head, trying to shake away the hot blue haze, and growled to his men to unship the oars and row toward land. The exhausted men bent to the oars, and the ships crawled over in the fire-blue water. With their last strength, they pulled the ships up onto the beach, past the high tide mark, and then lay down and went to sleep. As they slept, the lotus eaters came out of the forest. Their arms were heaped with flowers, which they piled all around the sleeping men in great blue and purple bouquets, so that they might have flowers to eat when they woke up. For these people were very gentle and very hospitable. The man awoke and smelled the warm honey smell of the flowers and ate them in great handfuls, like honeycomb, and then fell asleep again. Morpheus hovered over the sleeping men and read their dreams. Ooh, these men have done terrible things, the god whispered to himself. Their dreams are full of gold and blood and fire. Such sleep will not rest them. So in other words, they're thinking about what they did during the Trojan War. And he mixed them some cool green and silver dreams about their homes. The nightmares faded then. Wounded Trojans stopped screaming. Troy stopped burning. They saw their wives smile and heard their children laugh. They saw the green wheat growing in their own fields. They dreamed of home and awoke and were hungry and ate the honeyed lotus flowers and fell into a deeper sleep. Then Morpheus came to Ulysses, who was stretched on the sand a little apart from the rest. He studied Ulysses' face, the wide, grooved brow, the sunken eyes, the red hair, the jutting chin, and he said to himself, this man is a hero. Terrible are his deeds, and terrible are his needs. Sudden are his deeds, and his dreams must be his own. I can't help him. So Morpheus mixed no colors for Ulysses' sleep, but let him dream his own dreams and read them as they came. He hovered above the sleeping king and could not leave. What monsters he seems to be making, Morpheus said. Look at that giant with the single eye in the middle of his forehead. We'll see him in a later chapter. And that terrible spider woman with all those legs. We'll see her later too. And the things he dreams, this angry sleeper. What bloody mouths, what masts falling, sails ripping, what rocks and reefs, what shipwrecks, and how many deaths there are. Ulysses awoke, choking out of a terrible nightmare. It seemed to him that in his sleep he had seen the whole voyage laid out before him and seen his ship sinking and his men drowning. Monsters had crowded about him, clutching, writhing. He sat up and looked about. His men lay asleep among heaped flowers. As he watched, one opened his eyes, raised himself on his elbow, took a handful of the flowers, stuffed them in his mouth, and immediately fell asleep again. Ulysses smelled the honey sweetness and felt an overpowering hunger to eat the flowers. He took some of the flowers and raised them to his mouth. As their fragrance grew stronger, he felt his eyelids drooping, his arms growing heavy, and he thought to himself, it's these flowers that are making us sleep like this. Their scent alone brings sleep. I must not eat them. But he couldn't put them down. His hand would not obey him, Exerting all the bleak force of his will, he grasped his right hand with his left, as if it belonged to another person, and one by one forced open his fingers and let the flowers fall. Then Ulysses dragged himself to his feet and walked slowly into the sea. He went under and arose, snorting. His head had cleared from the water. When he went up on the beach, the sweet fragrance rose like ether and made him dizzy again. I have to work swiftly, he said. One by one, he carried his sleeping men to the ships and propped them on their benches. His strength was going. The honey smell was invading him, making him droop with sleep. He took his knife and, cutting sharp splinters of wood to prop open his eyelids, he staggered back among his men. He worked furiously now, lifting them onto his shoulders, carrying them two at a time, throwing them into the ships. Finally, the beach was cleared. The men lolled, sleeping upon the benches. Then, all by himself, using his last strength, he pushed the ships into the water. When the ships were afloat in the shallow water, he lashed one to the other with rawhide line, his own ship in front. Then he raised his sail and took the helm. The wind was blowing from the southwest, and it filled his sail. The line grew taut, and the file of ships moved away from Lotus Land. The men began to awake from their dreams of home and found themselves upon the empty sea again. But the long sleep had rested them, and they took up their tasks with renewed strength. Ulysses kept to the helm, grim and unsmiling, for he knew what he had seen painted on the walls of his sleep in those dreams was meant to come true, and that he was sailing straight into several nightmares. Okay, so we'll read about the first one of those Monday. So again, for tomorrow, reading the first part of Phaethon for Monday, April 6th, pages 65 to 70. And for those, most of you who have the older book, and a couple of you have the newer book, check the page numbers I wrote down. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.